actually. So that's why I'm involved. I want to bring peer-to-peer permissionless cash for the entire world to undermine government's ability to control peaceful people.
For me,
What motivated you,
it's
Charlie?
sound money. So I saw Bitcoin as really a better version of money than what we've seen in the history of mankind. So we've seen gold, but gold has issues, right? Gold's physical, although it's not exactly censorship resistant because in order to send gold, you have to transport it. If you fly with gold, you have to declare it, right? So it's not with Bitcoin. You don't have to. It's censorship resistant. So in my talk, the 4 points I made that makes Bitcoin.
Do I have them right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have them up here. We'll put it on the screen for everybody else to see.
That makes Bitcoin is censorship resistance, transaction immutability, cost of production, and fixed money supply.
So let's talk about those one at a time.
For each of
if
these
you don't mind.
four, I can tell you what's the value, right?
Well,
so for censorship resistant, it means
can we start at the very top? So you say Bitcoin's intrinsic value. Can you define what you mean by intrinsic value?
Yeah, it means that this gives Bitcoin value, intrinsically. There's no, it just makes Bitcoin valuable and because Bitcoin is sound, this makes Bitcoin sound money, and being sound money is valuable.
What else has intrinsic value?
Some people will argue gold has intrinsic value.
Do you think gold has intrinsic value?
I think so.
Can you tell me why?
Why are we talking about gold?
Well, Bitcoin is supposed to be digital gold according to the BTC camp, right?
Yeah.
So what gives gold intrinsic value?
Gold, just in the history of mankind or humankind, people have valued like shiny stuff that is limited in quantity, so that you can't just create more gold, right? You can't just create fake gold. You can't create gold out thin air. So having limited quantity of something that is desirable because of gold's shininess makes gold valuable. So that's the intrinsic value of gold.
So your whole talk today was on like the economic characteristics of Bitcoin's intrinsic value. Is that right?
Sure.
Do you have a background in economics?
I didn't study economics.
Okay.
Is that what you mean? It's not about economics, right? It's just
not?
about intrinsic value.
So intrinsic value is, I think, an economic term. No. I guess I'm curious.
It's a financial term.
Did you think up these reasons by yourself, or did you how did you come to these conclusions that Bitcoin's intrinsic value is from censorship resistance, transaction immutability, cost of production, and a fixed money supply?
So I'll explain it this way, right? So censorship resistance gives you something that cannot be blocked from sending. Transaction immutability gives you something that cannot be reversed or taken away. Cost of production gives you something that cannot be counterfeited, right? It costs something to create another one. And fixed money supply means that it's something that cannot be devalued. So you have a new form of money that cannot be blocked from spending, cannot be reversed or taken away, cannot be counterfeited, and cannot be devalued. These four properties of money makes it very valuable because we've never had
intrinsically.
Something like this. Yeah. Because if you have a Bitcoin, you have these four properties. You have a Bitcoin, it's stored in the blockchain, right? It's somewhere confirmed, so no one can take it from you by reversing the transaction. No one can devalue your coin. No one can create Bitcoin for cheap, which devalues your coin, right?
So Charlie, if I can interrupt here, if that's okay, I think you basically have no clue what you're talking about. And I'll tell you why, politely. So I will argue that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value whatsoever.
Okay.
And I'll give you a reason why. The value of Bitcoin is in the mind of the person that owns or is using the Bitcoin. It's not in the Bitcoin itself. If there were no human beings on the earth to value Bitcoin or to value gold or that Bitcoin would have no value whatsoever. So the value, there's no such thing as intrinsic value. The value.
So nothing has intrinsic value.
That's right. Nothing has
intrinsic value.
intrinsic
Well, then you're just redefining intrinsic value.
You just clarified that it's in the Bitcoin itself or it's in the gold itself. No, the value is
With
in the mind of...
respect to people, right?
The value is in the mind of the beholder.
Everything I talk about is respect to people. If people don't exist, it doesn't matter what I say.
Exactly right. So the value is in the mind of the beholder, not in the object itself. But you listed off here a bunch of things that give Bitcoin its intrinsic value. And another one that I really just was shocked, and to be honest, I'm embarrassed on your behalf that you had it up there saying that the cost of production gives Bitcoin its intrinsic value. Have you been reading Karl Marx recently?
No, why?
Have you ever read Karl Marx?
I read a bit of it, but
Okay. Have you heard of the labor theory of value?
sure.
Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, why don't you tell me about it?
Well, you had it right here in your slide in regards to the cost of production. You're saying the fact that Bitcoin takes effort to produce gives it its value. Is that what you're saying here with the cost of production?
So what I'm saying is that, well, if you actually looked at or listened to my talk, you would see that
I listened to every word of your talk.
the cost of production, there's a few things, right? One is you can't have, it's easy to detect counterfeit Bitcoin. So if someone sent you...
I think one of the slides specifically is that it costs just under $4,000 to produce a Bitcoin. Is that right? That was in your slide?
Can I finish? So the second part of that is that you can't create extra Bitcoins, right? So if a block has 12.5 Bitcoins, miners can't just say, I want to create 40 Bitcoins or 50 Bitcoins. And the third part of that is that there is a cost to create a Bitcoin, right? Right now, the cost is, from March, someone calculated to be $4,000 to create a Bitcoin. So the reason why that's valuable is because if it costs nothing to create a Bitcoin, then Bitcoins will be created for nothing, and it will devalue your coins.
You just
right?
dug your hole deeper. No. So the cost of producing something has absolutely nothing to do with its value, right? So if I were to bake a mud pie and spend an hour baking a mud pie...
I didn't say it has something to do with the value. I said it has something to do with the intrinsic value.
So Bitcoin's intrinsic value, we just remember the fact that there's no such thing as intrinsic value, and the value is in the mind of the beholder.
Sure.
So that leaves us with
Bitcoin's
value
in the mind of the beholder.
Okay.
Has a...
Does it have to do with the cost of production?
It's one of the four reasons I stated.
So you're a fan of Karl Marx's labor theory of value?
No.
Because that's exactly what you're promoting here. So I'll explain Karl Marx's labor theory of value, because I've read Das Kapital from cover to cover. I'm not a fan of Marx, but I understood the arguments that he was making. He basically argues that the amount of effort that goes into creating something...
right? So, like, if you just spend effort to do something, that doesn't automatically give it value, right?
Right, so why was that in your presentation today?
It gives it intrinsic value.
We just went over that there's no such thing as intrinsic value. The value is in the mind of the beholder, not in the object itself. And in regards to the cost of production, right? If I go and spend an hour making mud pies, that doesn't mean their value because I spent an hour making them. If I spend an hour making apple pies, the apple pies are valuable not because I spent an hour making them, but because people enjoy apple pie. People don't enjoy mud pies. So even if I spent an hour making apple pies or mud pies, the apple pies have value.
Okay,
the mud pies don't.
Okay, so you have a pie. It costs some money, right? It's worth something to you.
Depends on if it's a mud pie or an apple pie.
Whatever
right?
pie you like, right? What do you like?
Apple pie sounds nice.
Apple pie. It's worth something to you, right? If you have a device, like a Star Trek device, that can create infinite amount of apple pies with no cost, right? Would that apple pie cost just as much to you anymore?
So the price of everything, or the value, is set by supply and demand.
Sure.
So your Star Trek replicator would increase the supply, and the demand wouldn't necessarily change. So if you've increased the supply and the demand stays the same, the price comes down.
Exactly.
If you increase the demand and the supply stays the same, then the price goes up.
Yeah. And my point from that is that because it costs money to create another apple pie, you can't. There's value that cannot be destroyed from someone just creating infinite amount of apple pies.
What you should have said, then, to be clear, is that the supply is limited, which is totally different than your slide says the cost of production. So the supply being limited, that helps Bitcoin have a price because the price of everything is set by supply and demand. So if the supply is limited...
Okay, my argument is not perfect, right? I may need to refine it a bit.
I think you're understating it, that your argument is not perfect. Your argument is laughably sad to anybody that's studied economics. The cost of production has absolutely nothing to do with the value of a good. Absolutely nothing to do with it.
I didn't say it has something to do with the value of the good.
It's right here in your slide, and we'll put it here for everybody to see.
The intrinsic value of Bitcoin.
So you think that Bitcoin still has an intrinsic value?
Yes, by definition, that most people agree with intrinsic value.
I think you should pick up a dictionary and look up the word of intrinsic, and the value is in the mind of the beholder, not in the object itself.
Okay, so we disagree on the definition, because if you look up intrinsic value for stock, is there intrinsic value in stock?
The value is in the mind of the beholder,
not in the object itself. Is there intrinsic value in stock?
There is no such thing as intrinsic value.
Then we can't argue because we don't agree on definition. We don't agree on the assumptions, and we can't argue about the topic.
That's one of the fundamental tenets of Austrian economics is the value is in the mind of the beholder, not in the object itself. Okay. So, any other topics you want to cover, or is that a good place to wrap it up?
I don't know.
I think we went for more than our half hour. How much time do we have? It's been a while, right?
About an hour.
Been about an hour. Maybe we'll do part 2
I do like
in
talking
18
to you.
months. I enjoy talking with you too, Charlie. Like, you are a smart guy, but you got it completely wrong on the economics here and then the economics of Bitcoin. Like, totally wrong, and that's why you have like some of the biggest promoters in the entire history of Bitcoin. Now I'm busy promoting the real Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and I wish the BTC people good luck. I wish Litecoin good luck. I wish the Lightning Network good luck. I wish anybody that's building systems to bring more economic freedom to the world good luck with their projects, and I'll be supportive of those projects. But the BTC camp went off in the wrong direction and destroyed their first mover advantage.
Can I ask you something?
Go for it.
So, you're upset when people call Bitcoin Cash Bcash, right?
I'm annoyed by it. I think it's rude. Yeah.
Yet you call Bitcoin Bitcoin Core. Isn't that a hypocrite?
So I've been trying to make a clear distinction that there's Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash. And I think Bitcoin Cash has more Bitcoin-ness about it than Bitcoin Core does at this point.
I respect what you think.
Okay.
But I think...
I'm glad your brother does too. So.
Yeah. I don't agree with everything Bobby says or does.
Obviously not.
I'm not my brother's keeper, as
sure.
you say.
No. I think he told me once that you guys aren't allowed to discuss Bitcoin Cash at family gatherings. So.
You mean Bcash?
That could be the one. I think that may be what you said. I think Bobby said Bitcoin Cash. So.
So my point is, I think my advice to you is that if you are really upset about people calling it Bcash, you shouldn't call Bitcoin Bitcoin Core, right?
So what should I'll just call it BTC from now on? Is that a better option? Well, Bitcoin Cash is the Bitcoin based on a list of criteria that I gave very clearly. It doesn't matter.
It's still Bitcoin Cash today. If you ask 1,000 people,
yep.
999 will say Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin Cash. It's not Bitcoin.
So if I asked 1,000 people in 2011 what they thought of Bitcoin, they'd say that sounds stupid. But I didn't give up. I was persistent, and here we are today. Digital currencies are changing the world, and being persistent is how you change the world and get things done. And I plan to do the same.
It's confusing, okay?
Yeah, and the confusion was caused by a bunch of people that hijacked the BTC project and changed what it was, and then just wanted to keep the same name.
Let me just make my point. So, if you keep calling Bitcoin Bitcoin Core, you shouldn't be upset that people call Bitcoin Cash Bcash.
You really don't see the difference between the two?
No.
No?
There's absolutely no difference between the two.
We'll let the viewers decide.
You know why? Because you are trying to create less confusion, right, by calling Bitcoin Bitcoin Core. And that I understand that. And people
do you think people calling Bitcoin Cash Bcash are trying to create more or less confusion?
Less confusion.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Do you agree with me that there was
Bcash because for one, Bitcoin Cash is hard to say, and for two, it's very confusing.
Bitcoin Cash doesn't seem very hard to say, but do you agree that there was an orchestrated attempt to try and change the name of Bitcoin Cash to Bcash and drive new people to the cryptocurrency ecosystem to forums promoting Bitcoin Cash as Bcash rather than calling it Bitcoin Cash?
Do I see a...
Have you read the article by Donald Football? It says the reason people call Bitcoin Cash Bcash will shock you. Have you seen that article?
I think people call Bitcoin Cash Bcash because they don't want the brand confusion. They don't want people to get confused, to get misled into thinking that Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. So to buy Bitcoin Cash, you try to buy Bitcoin and then accidentally bought Bitcoin Cash. So I think...
So I gave a very compelling list, if I do say so myself, of the defining characteristics that I think make Bitcoin Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash has 8 of the 10 or 9 of the 10. Bitcoin BTC has 2 of the 10 or 1 of the 10.
Yeah, but left. June of last year, out of your 10 list, Litecoin fills 9 of them. So is Litecoin then Bitcoin?
Litecoin didn't originate with the same Genesis block as everything else. Wrong. That's an incredibly important one.
That's the most important one?
I think that's an incredibly important one. I didn't say it's the only one.
1 of 10. Right? So Litecoin
I think that's one that's probably required, period. And the other ones are a bit more flexible.
I'll tell you why that's not required.
Tell me.
So, if something happens in terms of cryptography that causes a situation where we had to start a new chain, right? Bitcoin.
So outside of an emergency of something breaking.
Not outside of emergency. Not outside of emergency. For example, like you've heard of Wimble technology.
Mm-hmm.
Wimble technology, right? It's a really cool privacy scaling blockchain. If Bitcoin community decide that they want to upgrade to this better blockchain technology, it requires a whole separate chain. You can't attach the Wimble chain
to the current
chain. So if that does happen, that's very unlikely that will happen. But if that does happen, that is still Bitcoin.
Don't you think it would be better for them to just start their own chain?
Oh, they are working on their own chain. Yeah. But I'm just saying, imagine a scenario where...
So hold on. Do you think it's better that they are starting their own chain rather than trying to get everybody...
In all honesty, if Mimblewimble is actually better than Bitcoin in all aspects, I would hope our community can decide to actually upgrade to a better technology that has no compromise, assuming it's better in all aspects, right?
So I think we're kind of a little bit off track with that. So
Sure.
if something's obviously better, I think people will switch voluntarily, and that's just fine.
And I'd like to see, and you probably like to see people switch and upgrade the current system and bring along the same value, right? You don't want to see a new system.
That's what frustrated me so much about Bitcoin's stagnation and
Sure.
intentionally causing
Sure.
a bunch of economic nonsense to happen to drive the most passionate supporters of Bitcoin to other altcoins. That's been incredibly frustrating for me.
So I just...
And if I can summarize a little bit too, the part that makes me so mad is that the BTC version of Bitcoin has changed into something that's not what was defined by Satoshi or the Bitcoin.org website or the Bitcoin white paper. It have insisted on keeping the Bitcoin name, whereas Bitcoin Cash most closely resembles the version of Bitcoin that you and I both got involved with in 2011.
I don't agree.
This is my point of view, so you can.
You're
free to disagree with it, yeah. And I think I've made a very compelling case, and I've made videos and given talks about this. And so what really bothers me is that the BTC version has insisted on keeping the Bitcoin name and attack the Bitcoin Cash people for even having the Bitcoin name in their name at all. Yet it's the one that most closely resembles the version of Bitcoin as outlined by the original Bitcoin white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto, and Bitcoin.org. That's what really bothers me. And the fact that they did it using all sorts of censorship and propaganda to where I can't even post my opinions on our Bitcoin or my posts will be deleted. I find that really, really disappointing when Bitcoin's supposed to be a censorship-resistant currency.
Hour of conversation about censorship.
Sure.
I think, from my point of view, I think I've told you, right? It's...
So maybe I'll sum it up.